Okay, thank you everybody for joining us. This is the 2021 Go Virtual Career Pathways Conference. I'm Brian Glassford from the San Diego County Office of Education's Innovation Division, and we'll be your Zoom host today. Please feel free to use the chat to ask questions throughout the session. They will be answered during the Q&A session towards the end. And now I'd like to introduce Charisma de los Reyes from the San Diego County Office of Education, Julie Labisi and Kim Berry-Jones from the San Diego Trafficking Prevention Collective with the presentation, Keeping Students Safe, Protecting Students from Human Trafficking in the Virtual World. Charisma, take it away.
Thank you. Thank you for that, Brian. And I'll go ahead and pull up our slide deck. And if everyone can just give me a thumbs up that you're seeing the slide deck. Excellent, excellent. So as Brian said, welcome to our session on protecting our students by training our students and staff on the realities of human trafficking. So we'll just, I think it's important for us to share through a brief introduction about who we are, how we came to this work and how we met each other. So I'll go ahead and start. My name again is Charisma de los Reyes. I'm a project specialist with the San Diego County Office of Education in the Student Wellness and School Culture Department. I just joined the SDCOE team about 2 years ago. And prior to that, I worked for almost 2 decades for Child Welfare Services, our local child protection agency. And why I'm excited about this panel today is because it really demonstrates the many, many years of collaboration and collective anti-trafficking work. And so when I was in Child Welfare Services, that's actually how my path then crossed with Kim. And I also just want to say too, that Point Loma Nazarene is where I received my undergraduate degree in social work. So I'm proud to be here now with Kim, who will introduce herself.
Thank you, Charisma. I'm thrilled to be here today. Also, I am the director of the Center for Justice and Reconciliation at the university and a proud founding member of the San Diego Trafficking Prevention Collective, of which is how I met Julie.
Hi, everyone. Happy to be here. My name is Julie Labisi. I'm with Global Community's Human Trafficking Prevention Team. And I started there about 2 years ago. And before that, I've done a lot of work in the field as a social worker, working with vulnerable youth and adults who've been trafficked. I came to this work, honestly, because my sister was formerly trafficked. And then I had known a lot of people, through my professional space that had been trafficked. So I'm excited today to kind of share a little bit about some of the work that we're doing with the Trafficking Collective, because like Charisma said, this is really kind of the tip of the iceberg of all the work that has been done to get us to this point. And looking forward to any of the questions that you have. Thank you.
Thank you both for your introducing yourselves. So our goal in this session is to first share some facts and definitions about human trafficking, and then we'll home in on the intersection of schools and what can happen. How can trafficking affect students? And then finally, we'll tell you about the 3 programs we'll talk about which pivoted to meet the students' needs and schools' needs of being safer from human trafficking during the pandemic. Okay, and so when we talk about human trafficking, it specifically is a crime involving the exploitation of someone for the purpose of compelled labor or a commercial sex act through the use of force, fraud, or coercion. Our federal law, the Trafficking Victims Protection Act, the TVPA, was first established in 2000. The TVPA provides comprehensive protections and services for victims of human trafficking. And the commercial sexual exploitation, or CSEC, and child labor trafficking fall under the TVPA's umbrella. So first, what exactly is CSEC? It is certainly a form of child abuse that refers to a range of crimes and activities involving the sexual abuse or exploitation of a child for financial benefit or in exchange for something of value. Some activities or crimes that are associated with this are prostitution, sextortion, as well as camming, or posting sexually explicit material on websites such as OnlyFans. Now, child labor trafficking is using force, fraud, or coercion to compel a child under the age of 18 to provide involuntary labor services or labor or services such as domestic work, agricultural work, and working in traveling sales crews. So it is sad that California, has this statistics, but according to the National Human Trafficking Hotline, California has experienced the highest number of trafficking cases among US states each year since 2007. So some things that we want to share is that from 2015 to 2018, California had 1,332 human trafficking cases that were reported to the national hotline. And among these cases reported, between 26 to 32% involved children or youth. Between 2016 and 2018, 78 to 84% of those cases were related to sex trafficking. Labor trafficking comprised approximately of 8% to 12% of those cases, and an additional 3 to 6% involved both sex and labor trafficking. Human trafficking can have immediate and long-term consequences that can negatively affect students and their learning environments. The larger school community's overall safety is jeopardized when some students are being exploited and victimized, particularly if a trafficker is using another student to recruit other students or is connected to student circles. Because of the abuse associated with child trafficking, many victims experience severe emotional, physical, and psychological trauma. The symptoms of trauma that can impact the learning experience of our students can manifest as depression, anxiety, difficulty learning, aggression, or truancy, as well as disruptive behavior or sudden changes in academic performance. Understanding the impact of human trafficking led our state legislators to pass AB 1227, the Human Trafficking Prevention, Education, and Training Act. So this AB 1227 actually amended our existing education code 5193, which requires students to receive human trafficking prevention instruction at least one time in junior high or middle school, and again, one time in high school. And so this shares information, this training shares information about sexual harassment, sexual assault, sexual abuse, and human trafficking. These pieces of legislation became more important when the pandemic hit. NCMEC, which is the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, learned in 2020 that they experienced a 97.5% increase in online enticement reports between January to December 2020 versus that same time in 2019. We knew that this meant there were predators who were taking full advantage of students being online due to distance learning. This time of disruption has led to, however, innovative approaches to give students in schools the tools they need to prevent human trafficking, as well as help their peers to safety. For this next section, I'll go ahead and pass it to Kim.
Thank you, Charisma. So one of those innovations that Charisma referenced is the San Diego Trafficking Prevention Collective. And this is a collective impact project that is a true public-private partnership that is providing end-to-end educational programming. And our motto is, an educated child is a protected child. And what we're trying to do is get upstream of the traffickers, before a child is recruited or groomed into trafficking and interrupt that. So our work is to disrupt trafficking across San Diego. And the way we did that is we came together in this collective, the SDTPC, and it is comprised of 3 nonprofit organizations. Each one of us has a unique human trafficking prevention curriculum. Also the district attorney, and the grant is underwritten by the UBS Optimist Foundation. So it's a private donors coming together with our district attorney to mobilize the 3 nonprofits to work together in the region to try to go further, wider and deeper in our prevention efforts. And so the 3 curriculums, 3 Strands Global Foundation has the Protect curriculum, which is designed for grades 5, 7, 9, and 11. And Point Loma Nazarene University has the No More Human Trafficking Prevention curriculum, which is a drama-based program that is designed for middle school and high school. And Global Communities has the Roots program, which is a social emotional learning program for elementary aged children. So working together over these last 3 years, we are in year 4, just the beginning of year 4 of a 4-year grant funded project. And we have been working together through the pandemic to try to address how do we respond in an environment where we had been going into the schools to do this work. So that has been our major challenge in this last season, was how do we reimagine our programs and deal with it in the COVID environment, knowing, like Charisma mentioned, that the exploitation of our kids was only increasing under COVID, as we can imagine, with kids online more, parents distracted, trying to manage school at home and holding down jobs. And all of those factors came together into this perfect storm that we found ourselves in COVID. And it also interrupted our access to the schools. And so during this period of time, we took these 3 programs, which were typically deployed in person to students, and reimagined them in different online formats. Still a work in progress as we have continued to learn and grow and change our programs to be the best that they can be in both the in-person environment and online. I think you can go ahead and go to the next slide, Charisma. So just tell you briefly about the No More Human Trafficking Prevention curriculum. This curriculum came out of research that was done by the university and the University of San Diego. And as a part of our 3-year study, it was a Department of Justice funded study that was the first time a metropolitan area had the opportunity to really try to quantify how much trafficking was going on. And the original intent of the project was to research the connection between gangs and sex trafficking in the San Diego region. But one of the primary findings of the research was the reality of grooming and recruitment going on in our schools. We visited 20 high schools, all the way from North San Diego County down to the border, across the entire region. And we found evidence of active trafficking in over 80% of the schools, and evidence of grooming or signs of recruitment in all of the schools. And this was shocking to everyone. No school obviously wants to be known as a place where this is happening, but it really opened up the eyes of our educational system and our leaders across the community. And so from that, they approached the university to ask if we would help develop a curriculum. And so this became a community-wide project. Charisma was part of the founding group that developed this curriculum. And it is unique in that it is based on the beliefs that students are going to best respond and retain what they're learning when we're using creative mediums, when we're having direct interaction with the material, and when it's facilitated by peers. So what we actually did was we developed a drama which shows the progression of a high school girl named Amanda as she is being groomed by what we call in the work a boyfriend pimp. So she's actually being groomed to be exploited by someone who she believes is her boyfriend. And it's happening under the eyes and ears of both her mother, her teacher, and her friends, but nobody knows what they're looking at and seeing. And so what we do with the students is we present this drama and then we go back through and we break it up into parts and we teach the prevention curriculum interwoven with the drama and help it really come alive for the students to recognize what Amanda's story actually means, and then how, if her friend's mom and teacher understood the challenges that were going on and what was actually happening to Amanda, they could have potentially interrupted the cycle and kept Amanda from being exploited. So almost 12,000 people across our region have seen No More. And it's also identified more than 100 students have come forward after the program to ask for help. Not all of those students were being trafficked. We also tend to have students that come and report other kinds of abuse or potential recruitment or grooming going on. But we have interrupted actual cases of trafficking, which may be hard for us to believe that a student wouldn't know they were being trafficked. But we have had multiple situations where students watch the drama and the barriers begin to come down as they begin to interact and trust the facilitators and the actors that present our program. And they have a light bulb moment when they realize what Amanda's story is actually reflecting their own experience. And so we have conversations frequently after we present No More, where we have the opportunity to intervene. And this is why the school place setting is so vital in this work, because that is a place where we have adults with their eyes on kids who are aware of the challenges they're facing. And as we teach school staff and teachers across the region what to look for, we give them an increased comfort level with understanding what they're seeing, and then also teach the very specific protocols for how to respond and what to do. And that's also what we're teaching the fellow students, is how do you go from being a bystander and not know what you're seeing to being an upstander, where you not only recognize what you're seeing, but you also know what to do about it. So that is, in a nutshell, the No More experience. And in the COVID environment, we moved it onto the Zoom platform. We still did live facilitation of the curriculum with 2 facilitators, one of whom is always a survivor, which brings us a very unique perspective to the program when the students learn halfway through that one of the presenters is also has also experienced a story similar to Amanda's that we're portraying in the drama. And so we continued with online facilitation of the program and a video recording of the drama. And we tested that. And honestly, we're very thankful we got to do it. And so were the schools and teachers that got to experience it, but it's not all that we hoped it's not all that we wanted it to be, because of the very unique live interaction that happens when we're on site. So we are in the process right now of some reimagination of the No More program to look at how we can more effectively present it on a digital platform in a direct to student sort of way, so that we can continue to both scale our reach of No More so more students can have access to it across the region.
Thank you, Kim. And I just want to say, before we jump into the next training curriculum, I just want to let everybody know that where you see QR codes that say "Scan Me" is where you can where you will be taken directly to the different sites that we're talking about today. So we wanted to make sure that folks had easy access. So be sure to remember that. All right, Julie.
Thank you. So at a time when California had the highest reported number of trafficking cases, 3 organizations came together to create a program called Protect. Protect offers school staff, students, and parents prevention education. What you see here are trainings for school staff that help them prepare them to recognize the red flags and respond to any students who show risk. During the pandemic, Protect was already optimized for the online platform because that's how it's built. But I do like to share a quick story about the motivation behind one of the founders to bring this curriculum to folks K through 12th grade. She had shared with us that her friend's daughter was actually trafficked. She came from an affluent area, and so it really opened her eyes that trafficking can happen everywhere. Once I did actually recover the child, folks had asked her what could have been done differently to prevent this from happening. One piece that she did share was she wished someone would have taught her about the signs, the red flags, right? To kind of understand that potentially this was happening, right? Before it got to the point where she was taken away from her friends and family. Next slide, please. So this, what you see here, is protects developmentally appropriate human trafficking prevention curricula for each of the grades, K through 12 schools. At each level, it covers a specific theme that speaks to building the students' protective factors, like their inner voice, understanding which people, places, and choices are safe for them. If you have interest in understanding what Protect is about, and for you as a teacher or a staff person at your school, or how we can protect students in this program, we'd like to refer you to Katie. And her information will be at the end of this PowerPoint. She'll be able to set you up. She also helps direct a lot of our work through the collective and gets folks connected for any of our programs. So yeah, and if you have questions today, I will be more than glad to help field those questions with our time today. And if I'm unable to answer those, I'm going to go ahead and refer you to Katie. Next slide, please. Okay, so this next program is Project Roots, and that's where I particularly spend a lot of my time as a senior program officer. Project Roots is, like Kim had shared, supposed to be for elementary, and we have also worked with folks through grade 8. But it was originally called Girls Only, and it was focused with girls. But since within the last few years, we've become more gender transformative. We're really trying to focus on all children, right, that can be impacted by trafficking. So Roots is a peer-to-peer mentoring program within the after-school and community-based setting. Roots, as we affectionately call it, seeks to build social emotional well-being of participants and minimizes risks associated with human trafficking, as well as other forms of gender-based violence. Roots, like I shared, primarily works within the elementary setting, but we can work with 8th grader up to 8th grade. And we can adapt programming for different age groups. You can see there is a website there that you could visit to learn more about our over 70 activities that we have in the toolkit that cover various topics that really are drivers or root causes for trafficking. We have created each of those activities under 3 themes: empathy, empowerment, and equality. But Roots has been kind of an interesting journey for us during the time of COVID because it's best used within a face-to-face context because it helps build that trust and understanding amongst peers. It's sometimes difficult for certain age groups to do that in an online forum. However, we did our best. We actually used Zoom, Google's platform, Google Classroom, in conjunction with some of our partners in the San Diego Unified School District. We implemented in the community-based setting in collaboration with a nonprofit called Project Access to really meet students where they're at, because the biggest goal for us during the pandemic has been just connection, purely connection, having connection with students who may be experiencing some of the vulnerabilities associated with trafficking. And if you have more questions at the end of this presentation, be happy to answer some of those, in particular with this age group. But one other piece I forgot to mention is what we really tried to do in this time, and I think all of our programs did, was to put our trauma-informed lens on, right? To try to figure out ways that we could be trauma-informed in an online space, which is very difficult. So we have some strategies that we could share about that if that's of interest for folks, because at this time, as folks know, students have been bombarded with a lot of stress. Their families have, and so we were very mindful of that during this time period. But happy to get into that if folks are interested. Thank you. and I'll pass it off to you, Charisma.
Sorry about that. I'm trying to unmute myself here. All right. Thank you so much, Julie and Kim. So the last resource, training resource that we will share that is available through the San Diego Trafficking Prevention Collective is the Virtual Teacher Academy. We're excited to say that the Academy is a free human trafficking awareness and prevention training program for certificated educators in San Diego. So once educators complete the free training program, they will have access to online curriculum and classroom instruction, as well as graduate level extension credits are also available at no cost. So we really encourage folks to encourage their staff to take this training. It's offered virtually. We hope to relaunch the program in January, which also happens to be Human Trafficking Awareness Month. And so again, if you are interested in learning more about this program, you can scan the QR code, or you can also email at info@sandiegotpc.org. And so with that, this next section will bring us to our panel. And so we hope folks have some questions for us, because I know we went through the content pretty quickly, but we wanted to make sure that we had enough time for the Q&A to fit within the 50-minute time frame.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Charisma. That was a great presentation. Kim and Julie, really appreciate everything that you put in for this presentation. I know you put in quite a bit amount of time of effort and time to put together that PowerPoint. So thank you for doing that. I definitely did have a question. I've already gone through the Protect 101 training. We're waiting for our second 102 training coming up in a couple of weeks, I believe is what we've scheduled it for. But how many educators have gone through the Protect training throughout San Diego County so far?
Happy to answer that question. Over 6,600, excuse me. And I put that in the chat for folks. I actually might want to just share that we've also had over 700 teachers go through More training. And then with Project Roots, it's a bit more intimate. So it's 57 teachers and facilitators. So I forgot to mention that. I'm happy to share more statistics as well. Protect actually has served at this point in time over 27,000 students. More over 6,205. And then with Project Roots over 700. So we have a lot of impact going on throughout San Diego County. I would like to mention, though, each of our programs are in different spaces outside of San Diego County. So we're seeing impact in other states as well, and in other countries are using some of our curricula.
Wonderful. Those are wonderful statistics. Thank you for providing those. We do have a question from Sani. Will it be possible to get a hold of the PowerPoint? Yes, it was a great presentation. Is there any way that we could disseminate that PowerPoint?
Yes, absolutely. We're willing to share it because, like we said, the QR codes will take you right to the places you need to get to, as well as our contact information that is at the end of the slide deck.
Perfect.
Yeah,
awesome.
You are welcome.
I'm also going to drop in a link to our this session's evaluation form. So we're always encouraged to receive some more information, feedback from our audiences, so that we can improve presentations like this in the future. So please fill out the evaluation form when you do get a chance. Let's see.
I just did have a question. Kim and Julie, what schools or school districts are you currently working with, and how's that going? Because we know that, right, we were in distance learning and now we're in the first semester back on school campuses. How is it going with those districts and or school sites?
Great question, Charisma. It has been interesting because, as she mentioned, there is a mandate, a state mandate for prevention education in middle school and high school. And the San Diego Trafficking Prevention Collective brought the funding to bring these curriculums to schools for free. And so we have tried to lower as many of the barriers as possible to get these programs into schools. But of course, as you know better than I do, as teachers, one of the biggest challenges is time. So having the time to add this into the day. And so we continue to try to innovate around how to make both the training that teachers take in order to have access to the curriculum easy, and also the access to the program. I'll give you a couple of examples of that. So in Cajon Valley, which is one of our strongest partners across the region, we were already taking No More into many of the middle schools. But last year during COVID, we couldn't go physically on campus. And so we, together with the Protect curriculum and the entire collective, worked to build an interactive student experience that fit right in with the normal middle school day for Cajon Valley. So using Google Classroom, like I'm sure most of you did, they had a roadmap experience that they got to follow to learn about human trafficking, and it looked and felt like their everyday school experience at that point looked like. So we tried to make it as simple for teachers as possible to be able to bring this right into their classroom. And that was extremely successful. We reached a lot of 7th and 8th graders with that program last year, and this year are working to expand it to reach even more and talking to other districts. So our approach as a collective has been to really try to be as flexible as possible to work with the different needs and issues at schools. San Diego Unified is as you know, a very large district and more difficult to navigate to try to get curriculum in. So in San Diego Unified, we have found success where we have some, what we call our teacher champions, who really understand the importance of the education, both because they've been trained and perhaps they have some kind of a personal connection to caring about it, whether that's having their own child or someone they know that's been impacted by exploitation. And those champions then have become really key for us to jumping through the hoops to get the curriculum actually into the school day. So like we mentioned, with both Protect and No More, those are done typically during the school day. And Protect is typically deployed by the teacher who is trained and then does the lessons with the students, and Protect is done, and No More is done in more like an assembly format. And then, as Julie mentioned, the Project Roots is primarily an after school program. So we have kind of really tried to create all kinds of different ways for students, for teachers and schools to access. And I don't know, Julie, if you want to add to kind of where are some of our key relationships around the region. Our programs are available at no cost to any public school district in San Diego County.
Yeah, just building off what you're saying, Kim, our primary partner with Project Roots, at least within the school setting, is San Diego Unified. We do work with a lot of elementaries. And during the pandemic, because as you can imagine, lots of schools were pretty stressed and they had lots of changing demands. So we were still, though, even in all of that, able to connect with the primetime after school programming, right? The extended learning day. And because we have such a strong relationship with them, they have been doing Project Roots in the after school setting for many years. We worked with them. We co-created some other version of Project Roots that's normally done in person in the online setting, right? And what was really great to see is that the facilitators who have been using the curriculum for so long started to use creativity more often by using the tools Pear Deck. I think that was one of them that they used. We also used Kahoots. These tools that essentially is gamifying a situation for students. That's what we need. These are motivators for students to get involved. Otherwise, they're going to check out. My daughter's in 5th grade. I could see her checking out every day if she had to be online all the time. And so that's one of our primary partners. But what was really great, we really tried to meet them where they're at, right? We tried to say, okay, how can we pivot together? Another opportunity that we had to pivot was with a community-based partner, right? And so a partner that already had natural connections with vulnerable youth who are at home all day. Maybe the caretakers aren't there watching them, even if they're on their tablets. So we were able to still connect with them on the online space, in conjunction with our community partner who had a lot of work in a subsidized housing unit. So our goal was to meet folks where they're at. So all these pivots really caused us to be innovative, I think, for the future, right? So yes, we had to do it as a stopgap in this moment. We were on emergency mode, but really learned how we can take some of these creative strategies and implement long-term. The other piece, if you don't mind, I might mention, is that trauma-informed piece, which was critical during this time. I know Kim has talked a lot about No More. They have eyes on the room. And we had to think about, maybe you want to talk about that in a second, Kim, about what that is. But there are always approaches that are trauma-informed when you're talking about such sensitive material. So we had to think about how can we do that then online, right? And do that in a way that we know that kids are safe when talking about this, not just physically, but mentally, emotionally safe, right? So we did work with some folks who this is their space all the time. They're working with kids who've been traumatized, and received a lot of feedback on how to do that well. A lot of students, I'm just going to show you, are probably doing this, right? The whole conversation. And allow for that to happen. Really, it's like using your tools, right? The chat function, private chat, or some type of like a drawing Miro, using them, that tool to help them to kind of express themselves in other ways aside from verbally. And also figuring out ways to say, are you safe? Can you figure out a place in your home, whatever that is, that you identify as safe, right? So setting up kind of that stage, that container of safety, so they can be vulnerable in the online space. So I'll pass it off to you, Kim, if you want to share a little bit about Eyes on the Room.
Sure. Yeah, that's such an important concept, Julian. We did spend a lot of time talking about that. When in the traditional in-person setting for No More, we'll do it with a group of up to around 100 students. But when we do that, we have our team of 7, and we also have about that many teachers and school staff. So we have a large team, all of whom have been trained on the protocols, what and how to respond. And so we break into little small groups. We have interactive pieces of the program going on throughout the experience. And there are a large group of adults that are watching the room and can see the signs of students who might be triggered or reacting to the material. When you're in the Zoom environment, that's a whole different game. So the primary way we dealt with that was by shrinking the size of our No More presentations down. It did mean that we weren't able to reach as far in the Zoom environment as we could in the in-person environment, but we were very concerned about doing no harm and wanted to make sure that, because the material is heavy and because we know historically that almost every time we present it, we have a student that presents after for help, that we had to be very careful with how we did it. And so we had small groups, and we worked closely with the teachers and counselors at those schools to be tracking what's happening in the Zoom room as best as possible. I have this one memory I'll never forget, because of course we really missed being on the school site and just the energy that is there when you're there in person. But I remember this young man from Cajon Valley, 7th grader, who was hearing about human trafficking for the first time and seeing it through the lens of our story, which is about a girl being taken advantage of and exploited. And he just sat there with hands over his eyes and then hands over his ears, and just his expressions were so impactful to me as a facilitator, watching him respond. And then he said at one point, I was so angry at the boyfriend that I broke the marble I had in my hand. And just see, even in the Zoom environment, how when we take the time to explain to kids in an appropriate way what recruitment looks like, it has an impact. And it was such a good reminder for me that day of all the hard days we had when we couldn't be out there like we wanted to be, that still doing what we were doing within the COVID challenge was still so important. And I can guarantee you that young man is not forgotten that experience and is now more aware and awakened to what to look for. And I think that's kind of the one last thought I have here, is that I think it's really important to understand that most of the young people that identify as being exploited, trafficked, or being groomed that we've come across over the years, they don't walk into the room knowing that about themselves. They don't think of themselves as a victim. They don't think of themselves as being trafficked. They don't have that language around what's happening. They may look at it as they're doing something for someone that they love, that loves them, and is asking them to do something that they don't feel comfortable with, but they are trusting this person because there is this belief that the person cares about them. That the psychological coercion is so complicated for young people and in their developmental stages that they're not seeing it for what it really is. And so for those light bulbs to go on in a way that feels safe, and they don't feel stigmatized, because the person who's been actually teaching them about the risks and what it looks like to be groomed has actually experienced that herself, and tells the students that this is her story too. It just breaks down those barriers and opens up the doors for conversations. And that's really our goal, is to leave staff at schools comfortable enough with the protocols and the red flags to know how to respond, and so that we can open up conversations that can continue on after we leave, so we can get in front and like I said at the beginning, disrupt the human trafficking.
Mhm. Absolutely. Yeah, thank you for that, because, as you had mentioned before, Kim, when the light bulbs come on, when teachers or other educators take the staff training, you can see their light bulbs go on when we talk about warning signs and things like that, because then they start to think about, was that student possible? Was that student? I mean, and so they're thinking, right? Wow, I didn't know what I didn't know. I'm realizing those were warning signs, and that maybe I should have followed up. I should have done something. I should have called the child abuse hotline, right? So the training is in all the different forms, right, are very, very impactful, as Kim had said, because, it's not just about trafficking, right? It's kind of this continuum of potential violence that our students could be exposed to. And we're always as educators, right? We're always aiming for prevention, because we don't want yet another child to become a victim of violence when there were red flags along the way. And so I know we're almost at our time, Brian, but there were just one more last slide that I wanted to share, but I know it's important that attendees make sure they take a screenshot of this slide, right, Brian?
Correct, yes. Yeah, so if anybody that needs proof of attendance, please go ahead and take a screenshot. Once Charisma is done presenting her final slide, I'll put it back up there just in case.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, no problem. So this last slide is really reiterating and reemphasizing, right, that an educated student is a protected student. And if we widen that lens to an eco-sociological framework, a trained school, right, is a protected school. So the more that we know, the more that we could do better for our students who sadly, many of them are at risk for many things. And what this pandemic has done is really, we all have now this shared collective experience of trauma, and so it's not just about ACEs or those kinds of kids being at risk. I mean, sadly, human trafficking does not discriminate. It doesn't care about regions. I mean, it is very, very prevalent. And, to be honest, it's not even just because that we're a border town. There's a lot of factors that go in there. But again, if we can receive the training at all levels in a school community, we will be better protected. And so last thing is, I just want to point out that this QR code in the upper right-hand corner will take you to SDCOE's resources for human trafficking. So you can access that. And then finally, this is our contact information, as we have mentioned. And Kim, Julie, Katie, and my information is available. And so I guess if there aren't any other questions, thank you so much for this opportunity and this conference, for us to provide this information and really encourage schools, to bring us on their campuses.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that. And I did want to just mention this Protect training and the other trainings for students is coming at a really, really interesting time. It seems as though the awareness for trafficking and advocacy for combating human trafficking is more or less coming to a peak. Hopefully it's not a peak, but it's definitely ramping up. And just wanted to throw out an example. The San Diego Union Tribune has recently reported that the Help Stop Human Trafficking training is being implemented for tourist hospitality workers all throughout San Diego County. So we're looking at thousands of entry-level positions that are actually going to be tapping into this type of information in these trainings as well. So our students, as they are going through these trainings in school, they're actually going to be experiencing some of these trainings out in the work world as well. So it really will solidify some of those aspects where students can really step up and be an advocate for this type of training. So thank you so much. I want